Hello, fellow humans.
Well, welcome to the Rise of Humanist podcast, where we explore what it means to stay human in a world increasingly run by algorithms, bots, and machines. I'm Mike Schindler.
And I'm Chris Nolan.
And together, we're going to show you how to stay absolutely powerful,
Stay human.
and rise and thrive in the age of AI.
Yes, and even show you how to beat the bots. Well, let's rise.
The rise of humanness in the age of AI. It's a podcast with Chris and Mike. The rise of humanness in the age of AI. Stay curious, stay human, let's rise.
Well, everybody, just welcome to the Rise of Humanist podcast. This is where we absolutely explore how to be more human in a world run by technology. And by machines, and how do we become indispensable?
So that in the future, you don't take orders from your toaster.
Right. Chris, it's so funny because I think we'll probably discuss that whole piece. But before we get there, I really want to introduce Salim. He's, oh my gosh, a renowned futurist. I love this. I really want to read your bio, Salim, because I don't want to screw it up. I mean, it's just, the things that you have done are exceptional. And I'm just going to say that to the forefront, but you really have this career of helping organizations like anticipate and adapt to what's going on in the future and how to kind of embrace this exponential technology, right? I mean, that's kind of your background.
That's the whole thing. It's also why I'm bald.
Right.
Because organizations tend not to want to update themselves and change for the new world, which is part of the whole game.
So, Salim, let's just start off with a little bit of the wiki side of you. You've had quite a journey. You were born in India, you lived in Canada, you ended up at Yahoo Innovation Labs. But how did that lead to Ray Kurzweil and Singularity University and Peter Diamandis and Stephen Kotler and founding OpenXO and inventing the future? I mean, what was that light bulb moment when you just woke up?
It's a long and sordid story of accidental missteps, is what it is. So I came to Canada when I was 10 years old. We left India. And when I was a teenager, I asked my dad one time, why did we move? We had a great life in India. We had servants and a driver and a cook. And now I'm having to mow the lawn here. What the hell?
That sounds like Chris. I mean,
and he said, I hate noise, dirt, pollution, and corruption. I was like, oh God, if you hate those things, then India is not a great place to be. So I did my schooling in university here in Canada and then went to Europe for 10 years. And I've been in the US for 20 odd years. And I've always had a technology background, and it was building software companies, ended up in Silicon Valley, and Yahoo said, hey, we're building an incubator, come and run it. And so I joined Yahoo for a couple of years until Microsoft tried to buy them. I ran into this problem that the more disruptive an idea we came up with in the incubator, the less the company could handle it. Because of what I call this immune system problem, where you try anything disruptive in a legacy environment and the antibodies attack you. Because all our organizations and all our institutions are designed for resisting change and de-risking things, right? And yet disruptive change is the high order bit. And how do you juxtapose with that is almost all of the work I've been doing since then. What happened was I set up a relationship between Yahoo and NASA to do some interesting projects together. And the NASA people one day invited me to the founding conference of Singularity University. They said, we're bringing 70 thought leaders from the Bay Area together. We'd like you to come along. And somehow I'd never heard of Ray Kurzweil, Peter Diamandis, X Prize, or even the Singularity. Somehow I'd missed all of this. I walked into this event, asked a lot of questions, and about 2 weeks later, Peter said, do you want to run it? And I remember hanging up the phone, and my wife said, how's the call? And I said, I think I'm a dean. I don't know how that happened.
Did you have hair then?
I did not have hair then. The hair was gone a long time ago when I was restructuring French companies in Europe.
So this is where you and Mike are bonding. You can see.
I'm totally digging the hairstyle. So
there you go. So I was in the CEO role for just under 3 years, and then I ran all the programs at Singularity for another few years. And on the back of that, I wrote this book. And I'll tell you a funny story. The book I was actually trying to write was how do you create luck? Because I realized that in Hollywood, you can be a great actor, you can be unbelievably talented, you can work your ass off, but if you don't have that lucky break, you don't succeed. And increasingly, Silicon Valley is becoming like that, where you have teams that are working their ass off, they're really talented, but if they don't have the lucky break of having the right VC or the right strategic partnership, there's 10 other companies trying to do Uber, but Uber somehow has the right feature footprint, something that pops up. So I was actually trying to write a book on how do you create luck. And I looked at it and I kind of went, I'm a first-time author. I'm probably going to make a rookie mistake somewhere along the line. So let me do a more standardized book. And obviously, we need to figure out how to the future of organizations. So I wrote the EXO book. Basically, and if you look at it, the first half is analytical. What is an EXO? Then we have a diagnostic test. And the second half is prescriptive. How do you apply it? It was actually the framework I thought about for a luck of how would you describe it? And then more importantly, how would you apply it? John Hagel and I have since done a bunch of work, by the way, as a separate topic, where we have a framework now, which is kind of like a Malcolm Gladwell level thing that we may actually get to, which actually allows us to do two very interesting things: get a very clear definition of luck, and more importantly, we can measure it. And that gets very interesting along the way. Wow. Anyway, I wrote this Exponential Organizations book as, let me see if I can get a meme into the world. And the damn thing took off, and I've been chasing it around since then.
That's great.
So, this is the serendipity aspect of this. And I'll tell you one other crazy story around this, which is 3 years into Singularity, I'm pretty fried. And I said to Peter, I really need a break. Because we built it with like 5 people in the first year and 8 people in the second year. And Peter's a bit of a black and white guy, rather on the team or off the team. 2 days later, literally calls me up and says, right, we found somebody to replace you. You're out. I was like, whoa, wait, well, that was fast. But okay, my legacy's set.
Bad luck.
But okay, but geez. And then my wife and I got married the week of the launch of Singularity. We were trying to have a baby. She finally gets pregnant. And I said to her, we've not had any alone time since we got married. Let's take 2-3 months and live on our own somewhere. And she said, great, but I want to be away from NASA. I can't stand this conversation. When I tell my family you're at NASA, they think I mean the Bahamas, and it's a mess. So I said, fine, you pick the place. So she researches for a few weeks, picks a penthouse, a vacation rental in Santa Monica overlooking the ocean. We move in. I go out to get a coffee, and I come back, and she's very angry, standing there. And I said, what's wrong? She goes, we picked the wrong place. I said, what do you mean? Look at this vista, etc. She pulls me to the balcony, and across the street is Peter's house.
In Santa Monica.
In the whole of LA, we end up living next door to Peter. You want karmic mischief? I give you karmic mischief. So Peter was great. He's like, this is great. We'll have coffees on the beach every day and discuss strategy. And I was like, Peter, and in the overall process, and then at some point you just go, I surrender, right? This is meant to happen. Just go with the flow. And we've formed a very deep and wonderful relationship since then.
Oh, I think he's terrific. I mean, obviously Gladwell's terrific with like things that happen to create luck. He's fantastic. But there's a book. Do you know who Gay Hendricks is, who wrote The Big Leap?
No.
Yeah, he has a book on luck.
Okay. Oh, that book is exceptional too. Yeah, that's a great
Gay
book.
Hendricks.
Yeah, they're both really great books.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
I'll check it out.
I love the idea of measuring luck. That's interesting. I mean, I so want to go deep on that. I want to switch kind of gears a little bit and talk about OpenXO, because that's
let's do that. What I'd like to do maybe is have a conversation where John and I come on board and talk about it together, because he's been deeply involved in John Hagel. I'm talking about.
Right. I will deliver profits like a startup on Red Bull.
Well, I mean. Yeah, so talk about that a little bit. Give us how's OpenXO different from like linear companies? I mean,
So I wrote the book 10 years ago now, and a community formed around the book and started saying, hey, we want to apply this model. And it turns out to apply equally as to big companies as it does to startups. Even government departments are starting to use it. We have a kind of an unbelievable piece of data where in 2015, we took the Fortune 100 and ranked them against this model. So does Goldman Sachs leverage community? Is IBM purpose-driven? Does GE use lean startup thinking, et cetera? And we came up with an index because we have a quantified score. And I presented that on Squawk Box, the stock market program on CNBC. And said, here's the index of the most adaptable, flexible, agile companies of the Fortune 100, ranked by that agility or ranked by our EXO score. 7 years later, a community member of ours did a back test and looked at the 10 of the Fortune 100 that use the attributes the most and the 10 that use the model the least. And the difference between this early, which are the most agile and flexible, which is the least agile, least flexible of the big companies. And the difference in their performance was unbelievable. Revenue growth was 3x higher, profitability 6x higher, but shareholder returns over that 7 years were 40 times higher
Wow.
for the companies that were adaptable compared to the
Wow.
companies that were not. And you literally can't believe the numbers.
Yeah.
And so basically the thesis becomes very clear that as the world becomes more volatile and more VUCA oriented and so on, your ability to adapt is going to drive market value. And now we can prove that 6 ways to Sunday. And so over the years, we've built a global community, which is it's like a decentralized McKinsey's based on the thesis of the book. That number is close to 40,000 people now of entrepreneurs, technologists, inventors, consultants, and they use the model in 150 countries, applying it to their local governments or cities or companies or whatever. So that's
Can you do
kind of
this for like family budgets, like Salim? I mean, I think, the world could use it for like their family budgets almost.
you could use it for family budgets. It's more relevant for organizational structures.
Yeah.
Like for example, in Mauritius, this island country in the Indian Ocean, they have 2 million square kilometers of ocean they have to patrol. And they've got like 3 naval boats. So they use this model. They've enrolled all the fishermen into a giant community who report in. They have dashboards to track everything. And they're able to manage this massive ocean area with a very small footprint because they use these characteristics in the model. And so what we found is government departments are converting to it. We call this the decade of the EXO, that if you're not following this model over the next few years, you just won't survive because the performance difference is so clear, especially as we enter this very volatile era. And the level of volatility is only going up, as we can see.
Yeah, that's so true, right? Chris, do you remember when we did the movie and we thought, man, we've got a window of opportunity, Salim, because, the whole world shut down in 2020, right? And we thought, gosh, we're doing this big project on VUCA and then the world's going to get better. And to your point, the volatility is just like exponential growth.
Oh, it's gotten more complex. I mean, even the, all of the research is that anxiety's up and
everything. I have a very kind of deep metaphor I use, which I could get into. It takes a couple of minutes to describe, but that's up to you guys.
Yeah, no, go.
No, you could do
it. Okay.
Yeah, here's
So,
this,
if you look at this from a thermodynamics perspective, you have ice and water and steam as 3 phase changes in water, right?
Yeah.
So when you have ice molecules, the molecules are very cold and slow. They don't move very far over. They hold their shape. Then you put energy in the system, you get to water, and now they go to the boundaries of the system, it's more active, etc. Then you put more energy and you get to steam, which burns you. It's hard to contain. Molecules are very, very active. And what I did a whole kind of analysis of this with a colleague called Malcolm Pollock, and we looked at domain after domain of human activity, like messaging. Take messages. We used to send homing signals or the Pony Express or smoke signals, right? Or etc. To move very cold, very slow, didn't move very far, very fast. Then you add some technology into the system and you get postal mail, which goes anywhere in the world via ships, but it's just slow. And now we have tweets and emails, and we vaporized messaging completely. Once you send an email, it's gone.
This is interesting. Yeah.
Right? If you take, say, money, we used to trade camels or goats or seashells. Again, very local, very slow. Then we had standardized letters of credit. Then we floated our currencies. Perfect for the analogy type of thing. And now we have Bitcoin and we vaporized. Money is now in a vapor state, etc. Or human organizations, we used to work in clans or tribes, very local and very small, very slow. Then we moved to empires and multinational or nation states, multinational corporations, and now we have Facebook groups. And we vaporize that. And the challenge I think we're seeing is that as we move domain after domain through ice to water to steam in a highly active world with technology as the fuel, how do you cool things down? Stable structures don't form in a vapor state. And so the world is becoming more and more vaporized, and there's no stable structures to cling on to. You look at the Arab Spring and the Wall Street movement, or Occupy Wall Street, lots of hot air, right? Nothing stable falls out of it, and then we revert back to the old, which isn't the right answer. We just don't have enough mechanisms or scaffolding to create the new. And so this is what I think is the fundamental problem: is we're heating up the world more and more, and we don't have a place for it to get to.
So climate change is kind of universal.
Exactly. It's
Yes,
just
it's
a
not even
metaphor for
climate.
everything.
Global warming is
Yeah. In
pervasive.
fact,
Mental
10
global
years
warming even.
10
Yeah.
years ago, we actually got the raw readings from Mauna Kea in Hawaii off the observatory at Singularity, and
Right.
we looked at the raw data, and it was clear the carbon readings were like a hockey stick, right? Exactly the wrong
Yeah.
exponential. And we ran a bunch of calculations and worked out that in about 20 or 25 years, Miami's gone. So I actually moved to Miami. Figured might as well enjoy it while I was there. And so I was based in Miami for most of the last 10 years, and then just recently moved up to New York for family reasons and other
Because you
stuff.
don't want to be underwater.
Well, it's not so much that, it's just that every
No,
time
I'm just saying.
no,
Yeah.
no, but every time a hurricane hits Florida, it takes
Yeah.
out a week of the economy, right? And
Oh,
you can't
yeah.
get insurance now,
Can't get
home
insurance.
insurance now, and
Right.
all the condo buildings are falling into disrepair, and they don't have the reserves to pay for that. So all these folks that have their condos, their only source of asset, are
Yeah.
watching them get wiped out. And so this is like just a train wreck happening
Huge
at many,
problem.
many levels. And
Interesting.
there's no obvious fix to it. From Boca Raton down, the average sea level is about 18 inches over sea level.
Yeah. I know.
So
It's crazy.
it's a big problem.
Big problem. Well, we're actually one of our things that we're working on, Mike and I, it's called Climate of Hope: Cities Saving the World. We're going
Yeah.
to Arizona State University, in fact, today, this afternoon, to talk to them about involving them with it and doing not only a 90-minute film, but also virtual reality, so kids can, learn about this in schools. It's a very cool project.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Well, let's talk about the elephant-sized robot in the room. So, the rise of humanness is about expanding human value in the age of AI. It's the podcast theme. We just released a book on it. So it's about taking human powers to the quantum level. And Altman says, of course, now that most of the jobs by 2025 will have AGI in them. So, which means, Mike, we might not need human podcasts anymore.
No, I mean, I don't even want to admit, but there might be a podcast that I have some AI filling in for me on a different podcast.
Yeah,
I mean,
so
yeah.
we're already getting there. So the big question is, how do we navigate the balance between this slow existential dread of going from cool toys to world domination, and where all the AIs are AI agents now, we're going to be automating all the worst. How do we boost the quantum level of human value, now or in the near future?
I have a fairly controversial take on this. Yeah, I'm like
oh,
my
good.
other
We love
groups.
controversy. It's good.
So I'm not worried about it at all. Okay.
Oh,
And the reason that I'm not worried about it has several forms. Let me touch into a couple of them. One is we worry about jobs being lost, right? And in the history of the world, when we've seen major technological injection, we find there's a temporary dip, jobs transform, and then we increase employment radically.
Yeah.
The easiest example is bank tellers and ATMs in the 1970s. When we first created ATMs, there was all this hand waving, oh my God, millions of bank tellers will be out of the work. What will we do with them all? Et cetera, et cetera. Except what actually happened was the cost of running a bank branch dropped by about 10x. The banks created 10 times more branches, and the number of bank tellers hasn't changed at all. And so this is a consistent pattern that we've seen wherever we can measure it. The three countries that have the highest penetration of robots in them today are Korea, Sweden, South Korea, Sweden, Germany. The countries with the lowest unemployment in the world are Sweden, South Korea, Germany, because there's just so much more work to be done. Another easy example is trucking, where we will very quickly automate truck driving. There's no need for a human being to be sitting behind a wheel for a thing going for 5,000 miles across the country. If you go talk to a trucking company, because there's about 3 million jobs associated with trucking, they're like, we'd hire 1,000 truck drivers today if we could find them. We just can't find them. Nobody wants to do that work, right? And so there's this unbelievable, we need automation to get the work done. Okay, what that means is all this automation uplifts human activity because we automate And the best framing I have for this is what I call white collar drudgery. So if you're a booking agent for a family resort in the Caribbean, and some family calls and we got 4 kids across 2 families, we want to have connecting rooms, we want to be close to the pool, figure it out. You'll spend like hours figuring out what's the right combinatorics around this. And AI could just go, yeah, give them those 2 rooms and just move those 2 people over there, and you'll remove a lot of that. What does that do? That frees the human being to work on the harder problems and more, and you just then uplift, and we just keep uplifting. So and also the final piece around the job stuff. Well, let's say I'm a financial advisor, and yes, you're going to have robo advisors and automatic portfolio assessment type things doing. But in my job of being a financial advisor, there's about, I think the number is 27 different tasks that are involved, like the human connection and other things. You might automate a piece of it, but you're not automating the whole thing. And so you don't lose the job, you just automate some aspect of the job. Now, then I come to so that's the employment conversation, et cetera. But let me touch on the AGI part, because I think this is the part where I have the biggest beef. We talk about machines becoming more intelligent than human beings, and this is actually the basis of the technological singularity, right? We actually had this very famous quantum physicist come and visit us at Singularity for half a day. And so I'm having a coffee with him after his day, hanging out with the students. And he's like, amazing what you've done here. Unbelievable. Totally loved it. But I've got a big question. I said, okay, what's that? He said, well, you're not a university and you're not about the singularity. So what are you? And I was like, damn, branding problem. Aside from that, the name is perfect. So when you talk about this idea that machines become more intelligent, my big beef with this is, what do you mean by intelligence?
Yeah, exactly.
There's about a dozen facets of intelligence.
Yeah.
And the IQ test, as we know it, measures 2 of them: this speed of thought processing, the ability to match concepts across frameworks. It doesn't measure emotional intelligence or linguistic intelligence, musical intelligence, spatial intelligence. The Eastern concept of presence or awareness is not anywhere in there. So I see a spectrum, okay? And I'm actually going to put out a bit of a thought piece on this. And the first part of that spectrum is raw data crunching, machine learning, analysis of data, okay? Signal to noise type stuff. Then you get to what I would call categories of human intelligence, like linguistic intelligence, musical intelligence, emotional intelligence, spiritual intelligence to some level. And these are very connected to the physique of the human being. Our emotions are subroutines running in our bodies, right? And so emotional intelligence is very connected. Now, if I'm a leader and I'm making a business decision, I'm bringing a lot of these different types of intelligences to bear, whereas an AI is doing mostly the number crunching side still, because it doesn't have a physical body to interface with the world.
Reasoning. Exactly.
Right.
And so my gut feel for how the room is acting is a lot about when I present, and you folks do the same when you're out in group environments. So that's the human intelligence. But then you get to the next level of what I would call spiritual or collective intelligence, leading to consciousness, group consciousness, network effects. We know that people meditating in groups have a much more powerful experience, for example, right? There's a whole era of collective consciousness, and we don't have definitions for any of this. And this is where I really find the biggest beef I have. We're worried about machines becoming conscious. We have no definition for consciousness. We don't have a test for consciousness. Right?
Yeah.
Like a subset of consciousness, if you talk to philosophers, is considered to be self-awareness. And you look like you're self-aware, so I attribute self-awareness to you, right?
Yeah.
I feel like I'm self-aware, but my wife disagrees.
Yeah.
So it's hard to even have the conversation because we get stuck in language around these definition problems in other areas. We don't even know what intelligence is. Right?
Yeah.
So I actually asked one of our faculty at Singularity, who was a robot expert, is there a system in the world that has the requisite inputs, outputs, processing power that it might generate self-awareness? Most people think that self-awareness is an emergent property based on complexity, for example. Okay. And so he goes, let me think about that. He comes back after a couple of days and he goes, I think I may have found one candidate. And he said, traffic systems. I'm like, what, seriously? And he goes, yeah, I think traffic systems have enough input, output, sensors, processing power that one day it might suddenly generate self-awareness and go, oh, I'm a traffic system. Right? And 2 questions pop up when you consider that. A, what would it do? And B, how would we know?
Yes. Why am I
That's
stopping
right.
people?
And we can't
Let's
answer
just let
either
them
of those
go.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So you get into a huge kind of a morass of what the hell are we talking about here? Meanwhile, everybody's freaking out because Hollywood always portrays this in a dystopian environment. You have
that's right.
Skynet,
100%.
the Matrix, the Terminator, the robot overlords come and take over the world. If we're lucky, we're pets, and if we're unlucky, we're food.
Yeah.
It always gets portrayed. But the reality is we're augmenting ourselves and augmenting the human experience with technology, with AI. And I think that's what I expect to see continue as far as we can see.
This is our book, Mike.
Yeah, I know. No, it's totally our book, but this is what I want to unpack a little bit because I agree with you, and I think Chris and I both agree with you because I have this saying where I think, excuse how I'm going to phrase this, but you can take the idiot in the room and make him or her the smartest person in the room with AI. But the
Yes.
difference is going to be that 20%, which is what you're talking about, which is the human value. But when you look at today's youth, right, like our age group, yes, we have discernment, we've got experiences, we've got backgrounds, we've got things that we can bring to the table. So what do we do with today's youth that is like, hey, AI is everything, and I don't even know how to have a conversation or look you in the eyeball. So how do we address that?
Great question, to which I don't have a clear answer, but let me make a couple of quick comments here. There's in the past, we've relied on generational change to adapt these things. And we tend to always be worried about our kids. What the hell, how do we guide them properly, etc. Right? Now, there's two big things going on here. The first is that we get scared of technology because of what Stephen Kotler and Peter Diamandis identified as the amygdala in the back of our brains. It's constantly scanning for danger. So when you see a new technology like autonomous cars, the first reaction is, oh my God, the car might kill people, ban the car. People don't want to be killed by robots. They'd much rather be killed by drunk people, which is what's happening today. I mean, it's absurd. But that we have to overcome that amygdala reaction, which is what leads to the Hollywood dystopian scenarios, et cetera, because it's so easy to trigger that. And then you vote on that and you end up with Trump or Brexit or Bolsonaro or whatever. Okay. But when you look at what's happening with the kids, I'm very optimistic and very pessimistic at the same time. If you went back 10,000 years ago, the world didn't change very much, and one generation lived exactly the same as the next generation. And the kids could watch what the adults were doing and mimic that activity, and then learn very clearly, don't eat berries from that bush at this season, you'll get sick. Right? And you knew how to navigate the world based on watching your parents. Well, think about our lives and how different our lives are from our parents. Okay. I mean, they're completely not appropriate. And when I was growing up, my parents were, a single complaint was, get off the damn phone. Why are you on the phone all the time? Your ear will fall off. Right. That's their complaint. Okay. And we're doing the same with the kids today, saying, get off the gaming device. You're going to get buried in it and you're never going to come out of it, et cetera, et cetera. And we tend to be freaked out about that. I tend to be more optimistic because we kind of worked out okay, even through our parents' fears. And I think what we need to do is just trust the younger generation. I'll give you one interesting factoid here.
Okay.
The most powerful leadership training in the world today is conclusively now World of Warcraft.
Gaming.
It blows your mind.
Yeah.
Right. The fact that, because if I can manage to connect guilds and manage a bunch of people remote who've never met and get them to perform an activity, that demonstrates leadership skills in an increasingly powerful way. And there's a very clear correlation between great leaders today and how much World of Warcraft they played. And so the younger generation is growing up with paradigms. I think Douglas Adams put this best, A Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy author. He said, anything in the world when you're born, that's normal. Anything that's invented when you're young, that's a career. Anything invented after you're 35 years old is just bad for the world. Just blanket. And I think, you talk to any banker about Bitcoin and they just get hives, right? They just can't cope with that conversation. So I got dragged 2-3 years ago into this entire NFT Web3 world. Okay. And I've been sitting in these Discord channels watching these kids trade NFTs and converse about them. What I found totally fascinating was in those conversations, you never, ever, ever, ever hear the word US dollar.
Yeah.
For us, the US dollar was the only unit of account that we ever knew.
Yeah.
And now they're getting used, this younger generation is getting, everything is in ETH or Solana or whatever domain or whatever freaking network they happen to be sitting on. They've got total variability on what they consider the unit of account. They will have no trouble in the future of going, my house is worth 3 Bitcoin. We can't conceive of that.
That's so
just getting
true.
their head around that just blows your mind. And yet they're growing up normally in that environment. And I think what we can do is give them some tools to guide them and then kind of go, And I just want to say one more thing about the past versus the future regarding employment and education, etc.
Yeah.
Over the last few hundred years, we trained human beings to be robots. You were an
Yeah,
accountant, you
100%.
performed an
Agreed.
audit function, you acted like a machine learning AI, and you did it, right?
Yep.
Then you were on a factory floor and you stamped out a widget, and you were measured on how good you were, how many you could do. It basically measured you like a robot. Your
Yeah.
job function was designed very prescriptively. Do that job function and don't do anything else, otherwise we'll beat you out. And all creativity was wiped out of that system. Okay. Now the most valuable employees and colleagues anybody has is the ones that learn the fastest.
Yeah.
And as we move to more human-centered activity,
Yeah.
and this is why I love what the podcast and the work that you guys are doing, is the kids will be measured on how human they are. And I think that's just great overall for the world.
Well, that's exactly what we're about. And along those lines, I mean, we love where you're talking about, because in the book we have 9 types of other types of intelligence.
Oh,
And there's more. And we'll maybe ask a question later on. We asked Ray Kay about this. So
yeah.
I'll tell you how that turned out. So since you're the dean of a university, I mean, how do you educate and the students there to access their human superpowers? How do you do, how do you expand their capabilities, their soft skills?
So let's note that one of the most profound additive skills over the last, say, 20 years for a leader is meditation, mindfulness,
Yeah.
health span, et cetera, et cetera. And we're kind of going back to connecting to ourselves. And I think that's generally a very positive trend. Yuval Harari is famous for doing Vipassana meditation 2 hours a day to get inspiration for his books, because all creativity really comes from the inside. And then you document it and interface with the rest of the world with it, et cetera. And so I tend to be more, again, I have an optimism bias, so just take that as a filter. But really, when I think about how you navigate the future, it's really via mindsets. We wrote the second edition of the EXO book last year, and we identified 6 mindsets that are critical for the exponential age. A curiosity mindset. Elon Musk has an exponential mindset. So he looks at a technology that's growing exponentially.
Yeah.
Where will it be in 10 years? And then build a company to intercept that curve, whether it's solar energy, cars, or battery technology, or neural interfaces. He just does that again and again. It's a very simple MO. All right. And so there's a bunch of mindsets. And a key question is, okay, you're doing something. What mindset do you have when you're doing some certain set of tasks? And what mindset should you have? And as we get better with AI, I think where AIs will become really powerful collaborators is helping us identify that, hey, you're about to go on stage. You're in a really grumpy mindset because of the food poisoning you had yesterday. Get with the program and light yourself up. Use psychedelics, whatever, and get on stage and do whatever with the right mindset. And I think
I tell Chris that all the time.
Identifying what it was and what should be, I think, is it going to be
Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's
Deepak Chopra. I mean, he's all about that.
100%
interface with you.
Yeah. That is so. But when you get to the mindset, and again, I'm going back to the youth because it's the future generation, right? And I think all of us here, we work with leaders, we work with world leaders, local leaders, et cetera. But the youth today, I think they have a curious mindset. I think for sure they have the edge of your comfort zone mindset, right? Because they like to try these new things. But how do you get them into that mindful state? I had this conversation with Mark Devine. He said, Mike, one of the things you have to do is you got to meditate at least 20 minutes a day. And I'm like, oh my Lord, Mark. I mean, 20 minutes, are you kidding? Like I get 5 minutes and I'm out. Like I'm snoozing. Like, how do I do this? And that was something that we worked on. How do you get this generation that has an attention span of like 30 seconds to get into a mindfulness state?
That's the $64,000 question. I have good and bad perspectives on that. On the bad news, they're all addicted to social media and have the attention spans of a flea, right? I think it's a second and a half that a YouTube video has to get your attention or not.
Oh my God.
It's like that level of
insanity. Takes me that long to even tee it up.
Yeah.
I know, where's the play button? So that's the bad news. The good news is that once you get them off the social media addiction, I'm finding that kids today are actually taking the time to be more thoughtful. And we as a species are finding other models. Like, look at the idea of this long form podcast, right?
Yeah.
this is not a soundbite type model. This is really kind of getting to know people. My favorite reference to this is the presidential debates when Lincoln was running for president a couple hundred years ago. The way they would do it is they would have a family picnic and two presidential candidates get on stage and they debated for 9 hours.
Oh my God.
3 hours for one person and an hour and a half rebuttal, 3 hours of the next guy, hour and a half rebuttal. And it was a family event. You took the family for a picnic. You heard somebody speak for 9 hours back and forth. You kind of knew who you're going to vote for at the end of that
Right.
9 hours. And I think we're moving back to that with the idea of podcasts and et cetera, et cetera. And that's getting away from the tweets and the stupid headlines and et cetera. So I think there's a natural rebalancing going on. People are finding the long term. I think AI will help in a lot of that because an AI will tell you, hey, I'm looking at your vital signs. You really need to take that 10-minute meditation break or power nap or whatever. I think that's where things will help. I think where I see AI massively, for me, the better framing of it is augmented intelligence, not artificial intelligence.
Yeah,
I think it'll augment all of my biological intelligence, my spiritual intelligence, my emotional intelligence, etc.
That's good.
Yeah, that's great. That's a great insight.
Again, I have an optimism bias, right? But
but I think
get the
we share
kids
that bias.
off the social media addiction because that's really a problem.
Yeah, I think we share that bias. I mean, that's the reason why we wrote, The Rise of
Well,
Human.
we're part of we did a documentary on AI last year with Garrett Leonard, and he has a big global thing called the Good Future Project.
Yes.
It's weird. He's gone a little bit more anti-AI in the last few years, but he's mostly optimistic. He's gone a little bit more like Harari. We could talk to you for 2 hours. I mean, we have so many questions about decentralization and all this
He's
stuff.
like, I like you guys, but not that much.
I'm going to pop.
You can do a follow-up event. I mean, the decentralization conversation is a really big one, and it's worth getting into. So happy to have a separate conversation.
Well, let's do that. And we deal with companies. We did a big thing with the USAA, and they were very optimistic about decentralization. How do you get the lower level, all the levels of decentralization on board? Those corporate zombies, that are at the bottom.
Yeah.
How do you get them all to be Avengers?
Yeah.
This is a problem we've been working on for 10 years now, because when the book first came out, I actually got called by the global CIO of Procter & Gamble and said, hey, we want to work with you. Your book is required reading across the company.
Yeah.
I said, I'd like to take a crack at this immune system problem because I faced it at Yahoo and every big company has this problem. And if you can't solve that problem, we can't progress humanity because you get this backlash. And it's worse in public sector. We have bankers fighting Bitcoin. We have taxis fighting Uber. Policy and regulatory is the immune system in public sector. And we have to fix that. And so we actually worked with them and created a 10-week engagement that we piloted with Procter & Gamble. We found a way of hacking culture at scale in a big company. And we have now done it 60 times, Black & Decker, HP, Visa, et cetera. It's a very tried and true process where we run this 10-week engagement. We have a nonprofit out of Miami that does the same thing in public sector. Because now you actually have to change policy and regulatory.
Yeah.
It takes 16 weeks, but it works. And we've done it a bunch of times, most notably with the mayor of Miami a few years ago. So a lot of the buzz around Miami over the last few years is because we got them to shift the public sector perception from viewing disruptive technology as a threat to viewing it as an opportunity.
Wow.
Oh, wow.
That mindset shift now goes, now the mayor wants to be paid in Bitcoin.
Were you part of the Bitcoin revolution in Miami?
Yeah.
Oh, really? Fantastic.
Well, I mean, I've been in Miami for 10. I was in Miami for close to 10 years. I'm a huge Bitcoin evangelist.
That's huge.
A lot of the Bitcoin guys came in a little bit after, but we'd already laid the soil so that they could flourish. Right?
Yeah.
Wow. Do you know Matthew Griffin? He works with you. Do he works?
I know.
He's another good friend of ours. Yeah. Terrific guy. So, Mike, I think we could maybe move to Ray Case since we're about 10 minutes out now.
Yeah.
We asked Ray Case.
No, dude.
Sure. So the Open Exobot.
Yeah.
So, Captain Kirk is always against the computer. He's always got a hunch against impossible odds, right? You're a Star Trek guy.
He's got a great dating.
Yeah, exactly. It's all about the thrill of the hunch, right?
Yeah.
So that's an exponential mindset. So it's also corporate because it's what Jobs and Woz had, like we're going to think outside the box. We're going to lean heavily on non-traditional instincts and all that kind of stuff. So we asked Ray Kay about this. And I wanted to tell you this because it came back with some very interesting things that I think you'll find really lead into your intelligence. It says AI has blind spots.
Yeah.
It's trained for deductive, chain of thought reasoning,
Yeah.
right? But humans do work with a whole spectrum of reasoning, not just intelligence,
Mm.
induction, abduction, free association. And I love this heuristics because that's gambling,
Mm.
right? So I'd love to hear your thoughts on this, this messy gamble-based reasoning. That how do we use that to make innovation more exponential?
So I think we actually use all that stuff in practice today. It's just not objectively stated as such. And let me
Yeah.
give you a couple of examples. So I have a degree in theoretical physics. So I have some perspective about quantum mechanics, etc. What quantum mechanics does is shows us the world operates at the kind of most granular level, operates at a probabilistic level.
Mhm.
And so
Mhm.
you have you don't say an electron is here. You say there's an 80% tendency for an electron to be here. It's like a complete mindset
Yeah.
shift on that. Now,
Mike, are you taking notes?
I'm totally taking notes. It goes to two types of plans. It might happen, it might not happen, right?
All right.
There's that whole wave particle duality of light type of thing. It's a complete
Yeah.
mess. By the way, if you ever want to screw with somebody's head, there's a video, an 11-minute video on YouTube called the Delayed Quantum Choice Experiment. Just go watch that. It's
Oh,
just super
wow.
funny. Because what they do, they do a double slit diffraction experiment and they bounce one of the photons off a mirror and delay it from getting to its screen. And so it arrives at a different time. But theoretically, it should never know what this, but somehow it knew what it was supposed to do like a billion years ago type of thing. And it just it just breaks your brain. It just breaks your brain. Okay.
Yeah.
Anyway, what quantum mechanics showed us is that we have a probabilistic perspective on the world, and reality operates around probabilities, right? Now think about Silicon Valley. You and VC will invest in 10 startups knowing 8
Yeah.
are going to fail. One will hit break even, one will hit out of the park. The problem is when you do the initial investment, you have no idea which of the ones is going to make it.
Yeah.
It's the 80-20 rule, right?
So there's a probabilistic approach right there. And any investor that uses a portfolio approach to mitigate risk is operating on this probabilistic level anyway. Generative AI is all probabilistic. What's the probabilistic likelihood that this should
That's
be
the Monte Carlo plan, right?
That's the whole thing. So we're seeing that level of reality now manifested into technology in a very powerful way.
Yeah, I think you're right. I don't think that, once again, this is that part of that freak out, and people don't realize that they're using AI to get 80% proficiency, but there's this, like as Mike said, there's this 20% that involves all this other stuff. I mean, abduction, I guess, is what detectives use, right? Where they go, we don't have enough information, but we have enough information to come up with this theory. Right.
And think about even in the courts of law, where you'd want as much objective data as possible. Juries are asked, can you agree beyond a reasonable doubt?
Yeah.
That's probabilistic thinking built right into the legal structure.
Yeah.
So it's actually manifested in reality in lots of different. We just don't label it as such, and so we get lost in some of that.
Well, it sounds like we got to create like this Captain Kirk University, Chris and Salim. You know what I'm saying? Like, because he always did things. Well, I mean, he did those things on hunch. Like, the computer says this, but no, I'm not going to do that. Right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's
there's also the we celebrate that a lot. We put a lot. There's a hero's journey around operating in that way.
That was one of our questions,
by the way.
Right?
It often goes wrong, and then you have a mess on your hands, which is why most startups tend to fail, because they went for that big hunch and it didn't work out, etc.
Yes.
So but at least we have the monster successes. I mean, Elon has no right to be doing half the stuff he's doing, but somehow he pulls it off.
Yeah, I hear he's got a smartphone now that's supposed to be, self-charging.
Is that right?
Yeah. Yeah, he's coming out with a smartphone.
Keep up with this stuff.
He's all over everything. Yeah, I like that idea, the Captain Kirk University. That
well, I mean, it's just the hunch base, though. But I mean, I think it teams up with you a little bit, Salim, in the fact that if you really can measure luck and even forecast luck, I mean, you put luck and Captain Kirk together. I mean, you save the world.
And you're done. Yeah. I mean, look, just the right down to the genetics of it, right? Like each of us was one out of 10 million sperm that happened to fertilize that egg.
That was lucky.
We literally, there's a great little story about how they choose a Dalai Lama. If you ever looked into this, is they have like a jar of glass beads, like 1,000 beads, and to qualify as a baby to get into the running of being elected as the Dalai Lama, you have to reach your hand in as a toddler and pick out the right marble that has a small scratch in it, indistinguishable from 1,000 other marbles. So that's the starting point, and then you go to the next level, and by the time you finished it, the odds of actually getting there are 1 in a trillion. And yet somehow they've always picked a dilemma. They should never pick one ever, based on the odds that they're actually given, but somehow they work. And this is something I find really fascinating when you get into Eastern philosophies, is they actually have worked out mechanisms for navigating uncertainty at a very, very profound level. It's built right into their ways of being. And I think there's something very powerful there.
Yeah, that's
like if you, for example, if you try and play backgammon with somebody from Persia or from Iran who's Persian, you'll never win.
Wow.
Really?
What it is built into their genetics, that it's probabilistic, right? Will I roll this thing or not? You will never beat a Persian at backgammon. Try it sometime.
Is it because they're just,
and they don't even see it. They don't even know what they're doing, but somehow they always goddamn win.
oh,
Well, I'm going to know not to bet on that game then. So
there you go.
yeah, that's my measure of luck. Salim, this has been amazing. I mean, we got to be honorable to your time. We'd love to have you back on the podcast. We want to go deeper with you on some of these subject matters. I think we're just scratching the surface, to be honest with you.
Well, it's a tragedy we've not met before, but now we fixed that. So there you go.
Yeah, and we'll talk to you more and Peter more about the documentary that we're planning and what we want to do with that, because you're exactly right. All of these areas that you want to explore, whether it's the 9 types of different, what is intelligence is a huge question.
Yeah.
The other one is that AI's reasoning, as we just got from Ray K, is also kind of a whole interesting way that you just said. It's used everywhere, but we don't know about it. I think there was something else we didn't put in here. Criminals use a lot of this type of non-traditional deductive reasoning, to cut corners.
Absolutely.
They're really about iterating, trying something over here, iterating in these very non-traditional ways of thinking.
Yeah. You should talk to Mark Goodman.
Oh, okay.
He was a futurist for the FBI, if you've ever.
That'd be fabulous.
There's a story he tells that I've never forgotten, which is there was a bank robbery. I think it was in Omaha or something.
Yeah.
And they were all dressed as construction workers with hard hats and helmets and whatever. And so after they robbed the bank, they pressed the button to call the police and said to the police, there's like 6 bank robbers dressed as construction things. So the police are like, well, that should be pretty easy to spot. So they go get to the bank and find that what they'd done was put an ad on Craigslist saying anybody with construction experience arrive fully clothed at this place. And there were 800 construction workers. And so they crowdsourced their escape by using Craigslist. It's just genius use of cutting corners, as exactly as you said. Mark has 100 of those little stories showing where do you get creativity unfettered by ethical or legal obligations.
Exactly. Especially in our cyber.
That is so amazing. Okay, so Salim, parting advice for humans, like trying to stay up with AI, like how to remain relevant aside from becoming a cyborg.
I have 2 or 3 quick suggestions. One is a bunch of mindsets that we've talked about. Be curious, have an exponential mindset, have a gratitude mindset, I think would be the most important one. We actually live in the single best time to be alive. And in 5 years, it'll be even better. And so just really, really think of any of our grandparents and how much unbelievable crap they dealt with to get us here, right? We've got unbelievably amazing lives as a result of this, and we don't really live in gratitude enough, I think, okay? And I think that aspect of gratitude then leaves just being really mindful about where you are in the world, your place in the world, what you want to be in the world, what you want to experience in the world. Because I really subscribe to the idea that we're not human beings with a spiritual dimension. We're spiritual beings having a human experience.
Yeah, it's
as was said in one of these books somewhere. And if you think about that, then we're living this lifetime in this modality, in this avatar. We should just love every second of it.
Yeah, that's well said. That's well said. Yeah, I think Collar's the one that said that basically 100 years ago today, we didn't we barely had refrigerators, and I don't think
That's
we had
right.
central heating even yet. So things are better. Well, thank you, Salim, for one thing, for not making us think that we're going to be cyborgs one day. So
Yeah.
that's
Well,
good.
by the way, we already are because technically, the minute you get a vaccination as a child, you're a cyborg. So we've been merging with technology for a long time anyway. Like you're wearing spectacles, you're a transhumanist. So
Spectacles. I prefer to call these glasses, but
glasses, whatever. I'm using the technical term to make the point.
He is a spectacle, though.
I am a spectacle. You put me on a street,
So,
watch out. Yeah.
and so I had LASIK surgery a couple of decades ago, and it's been unbelievable. And so I think we've been augmenting ourselves with technology unbelievably anyway. So the idea that there's us and technology separately, I think, is the wrong way of framing it. We're using technology to enhance the human experience, not detract from it.
Oh,
That's
you're
beautiful.
brilliant, Salim. That's
That's
just so
beautiful.
fun. We got to do this again. And
Yep.
we got Peter's info and then also Goodman. I think he'd be fabulous if you got.
Yeah, Goodman too. But I got to tell you, Salim, thank you. I mean, you are amazing. We're going to have you back on the show for sure. If people wanted to reach out to you, where do they find you? Like,
Go to openexo.com, and we have a huge community there. We have tools, we give training for free. People kind of use the methodologies, etc.
Salim, thank you, sir. Totally, totally grateful. This was so good. So good. Yeah. And
Very
once
welcome.
about it, we'll
Happy
give you
to
a
be back
copy of it.
sometime.
Yeah.
And we'll be
we'll have
happy,
you
by
back.
the way, if let's send Salim the book for sure. If
Yeah.
if they would like us, we'll go up to Singularity University and speak or something, if already whatever you
Sure.
like to
I'm
do.
mostly out of the organization these days, and it's gone kind of flatlined the last few years.
Okay.
Peter brought in private equity and totally screwed it up. It's basically what
Yeah, we won't put that in the podcast.
with his admission. So
well, this is all on the podcast.
Yeah.
Check this out.
There you go.
Yeah. That's great. Oh, well, thank you, Salim. We appreciate you big time. Yeah.
See you again
Yeah.
sometime soon. It was great.
Have a great day. We'll do this again.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Be sure to subscribe to our podcast either on Spotify, Podbean. Leave us a review there as well.
Share this episode with your friends and check out The Rise of Humanists on YouTube for bonus clips.
Visit our Facebook community, our website, www.itsvucamax.com. All right, guys, we'll see you next time.
Bye-bye.
The rise of humanness in the age of AI. It's a podcast with Chris and Mike. The rise of humanness in the age of AI. Stay curious, stay human, let's rise.